You good?
All set.
Ready when you are.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order. We're continuing tonight with budget departments. We've got 4 more this evening after half dozen last night, so thanks again for coming out on a balmy evening. And hopefully we're not brushing our cars off like we were last night getting out of here. That was ridiculous. But I had the snow broom in the car, which is kind of a win. Those are great. Yeah.
I had nothing, and thank you for brooming my car for me.
Those are the best. Amazon.
I had one. I gave it to my daughter.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I bought it for it. Someone bought my stepdaughter one, and I kept telling her put it in the car, put it in the car. Who knows where it actually is? All right. So, anything before we jump into DPW with Bill? No. All right, Bill. You're up. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. What are we going to first?
So Highway 422, bottom tab, kind of not the last, but on the bottom of the thing is vertically oriented. So when was it Highway versus DPW? Was that naming, the department naming?
It used to be Highway Department, but then it was a lot more involved in it, and I guess they changed it to Department of Public Works then, probably about the time I came on.
Yeah. Certainly do a lot more than just the roads.
Unfortunately, yeah. The only thing I have on here, under the salaries, is I did ask for an additional driver operator, which a full-time driver operator, which would be $50,449. The reason I did that was because we're so far behind right now. We had a tough year with one of our guys retiring, and we, for the first time since I've been here, we had to outsource painting of the sidewalks, the crosswalks, and a lot of the stop stencils and stop bars and crack sealing. $4,000 a day. The first time I had to sub that out in the last 8 years since we bought our own crack sealers, because I don't have the manpower or time to get everything done. Between mowing for the schools and the loose leaf pickup, it takes a lot of our time. And the loose leaf pickup, as everybody knows, that's 2 months of our time. It's the whole crew. So that's why I asked for an additional full-time driver. Capital, I'm asking for purchase of a backhoe, a 3-year lease. Our backhoe we have now, it's 12 years old, and it's starting to be costly to maintain. And it's a key piece of equipment that we have to have, can't do it without it. And I have a 3-year lease for $40,000 a year. And as you see, we've got we're in year 3, we'll be in year 3 of the 5-year lease for the Peterbilt. Mm-hmm. And a front end loader, year 2 of a 5-year lease. And the last year of the mini excavator we're doing right now, so that'll be paid for by the end of this fiscal year.
Where's the mini excavator? Is that?
Well, it's not on here because it will be paid off by FY20.
Got it. Okay.
Well, the mini excavator is paid from the
That's a different
revolving.
department. Oh, is it?
Well, yeah, revolving too, yeah.
Split 3 ways. It has historically been split 3 ways between cemetery
And water.
DPW and water.
Right.
Cemetery had paid for it outside of the operating budget for the first several payments. The last payment, there's no more capacity to do that, so it's been shifted. The cemetery payment is, for the first time, has been shifted into the operating budget.
Okay.
Just their third.
I did see that in here, right? The third somewhere. Bill, do you mind giving us just a quick overview of the staff, the level to which the department's staffed, in terms of the request to add 1 new operator?
And there is some detail, some historical detail on staffing of the department.
Yep.
In your packets. So from the early 80s through to present.
Perfect.
In terms of what they've had in the various departments, DPW, water, cemetery, park, used to be a little more segregated.
Yeah, we've got less than we had in the 90s, and now we have 2 cemeteries, we're maintaining the beach, and we're mowing the schools without the help of Hamilton. So, you know, we're spread pretty thin. In 2009, we had to cut our budget 10%, and that 10% included sidewalk. We used to have $16,000 for sidewalks and $25,000 for catch basin replacements and rebuilds, which we subbed out. Now we do it all in-house, and, you know, the guys are all trained, and we've been saving a lot of money doing that. But the problem is my manpower. We don't have the time to do it because we're doing other things. And the worst being the loose leaf pickup, which takes 2 months out of the year to do, and it's, you know, it's costly.
Yeah. That service has, I know, been discussed,
Yeah.
alternatives potentially.
Yeah, so I didn't see it in your packets, but I know that we had circulated it prior, so if you haven't seen it, we'll make sure it gets added. No. Bill, back in December, had put together a memo looking at what the potential cost savings would be if we stopped loose leaf pickup, just the bag instead. And basically, the bottom line there was we would save between $35,000 and $40,000 net in DPW expense, because at the same time we have taken on a lot of you know, the MS4 stormwater permit compliance. We're subbing that out to Weston and Sampson, or an overwhelming majority of that out. And one of the main reasons for that is because the time that we should be and need to be doing a lot of the collection and sampling and so forth is the same time that we're right now doing loose leaf pickup. So we would net about $35,000 to $40,000.
Yeah, I think it's a minimum of 40,000. You know, we have to inspect all our outfalls and sample and climb into every manhole and block it up. And if you don't do that, they will fine you. I know they fined the city of Franklin $10,000 a few years back, and that was before the permit took effect. So we need to document it, and they're going to start auditing in year 2. And if they find that we weren't compliant, then, you know, the fines will start. But we got an estimate of just that portion from Weston and Sampson, and they said it's $40,000 if they do it. And we have staff in-house with the guidance of Eric Mansfield, who does all the sampling for the water department, that we can do it in-house, no problem. And that would save from having Weston and Sampson do something we can do. I'd rather do something in-house than pay big bucks to get it done. It killed me to have the crack sealing and everything outsourced this year, because it is costly.
Yeah, so just to be clear, that's $40,000 in savings, and that's before adding the new staff person, which Bill is saying if we stop the loose leaf pickup, we not only would save $40,000, but we wouldn't need to add that other.
Yep.
That's what I was gonna
Yeah,
ask.
I can do without with the extra body if I had that 2 months.
It's enough work spread out. It's enough spread
Yeah.
out work.
Yes.
Move aroundable work that you could do it. It's not like stuff that's condensed in that time period when
Right.
you need the
Right.
added person.
So it's $40,000 savings from a level services budget,
right.
but you know, then there's the, you know, it's a much more significant savings if you account for the fact that we
Yeah.
wouldn't be hiring.
And if we
It's a need for DPW staff to add.
if we had 2 bag leaf pickups, that's just under $12,000 if Casella did it. And you know, the other, you know, so if you subtract that from the 40,000, you're at 28. I documented what we have to hire people to do the cemetery, Pingree Park, and that costs $4,500. And
leaf pickup for those areas?
to rake them and to clean it up, the whole, you know, the whole Pingree Park and the whole cemetery, which,
DPW crew are out doing leaves everywhere else around town.
All it is me and my foreman, and we can't do all of that. We do like Iron Rail Cemetery and the West Wenham Playground and the buildings. But, you know, the guys are picking it up because it takes all of them. And then the repairs to the leaf vac, this was a costly year. That was $7,300. It's usually around $4,000 because you got to replace the impeller and the liner and whatever else breaks down on it. And diesel, we used 990 gallons at $2,673. So it was a total of over $14,000. So that brings it over 40.
So when you said 40K net savings, that's 40K DPW, departmental materials, labor, materials, and service of the pickup. The machine takes a beating, right? But then it's what, 12 for Casella?
Yes.
Yeah, so you
So it would
take
be
40.
28 net or so?
Nope,
Oh,
nope,
no.
it's actually 40 net, so
Oh,
it's,
okay, so-
it's $40,000 that we're paying out to Weston and Sampson for all the sampling work.
Right. When we
So
think we could
would be
take all
doing
of that
in-house.
in-house.
Yes.
And then the, incidental operating costs are about 12,000, which is
Yeah.
what the leaf pickup is.
Gotcha.
So those are a wash, but it would allow us to offload that cost of all of the stormwater compliance.
Right.
Essentially, then, we'd be paying, I mean, with the offsets, we'd be absorbing the cost of a new position. Is that correct
Yes.
arithmetic?
Which we may not
Well,
need,
no,
so
what
it's additional.
Bill's saying is
yeah.
you don't actually need the new position if you're not doing loose leaf pickup.
Okay.
And that position's not going to help me get caught up because it's an entry-level position, but it would help me with manpower so that I'd have another body while they're doing leaf pickup.
So there's the $40,000 in savings on the level service budget, and then the new employee is just over $50,000 a year, plus
So
benefits is 60.
So that's it over the level service budget,
That's over level service.
even with the offsets of.
Yep.
So with the leaf vacuum, what's its useful life that's left, and can it be repurposed for anything else?
Well, we'd still need it because we've got so many parks and cemeteries to clean up, so we'd need it. We actually have the old one, which is 23 years old, as a backup. But, you know, we certainly wouldn't need both of them. But we will need one of them.
So the one you would keep is how old?
4 years?
It was just, I think it was approved at town meeting
5 years?
of 14, I
So it
believe.
has
I think it's
plenty
4 or
of
5 years.
useful
Yeah.
life left.
Oh, it's got 20 more years left.
And how much is that?
32,000.
Oh.
And, I mean,
I thought,
it'll get a quarter of the usage if, you know, and probably last longer than that.
yeah. And has there been consideration of removing loose leaf pickup in the past? And if so, what happened?
Everybody wanted it.
I think two people
Yeah,
at town meeting might have voted to get
Yeah.
rid of it when it did. What the last time, my understanding, the last time it got brought to town meeting.
Two
That-
people
two
voted?
people.
well, they did a vote at town meeting.
And was it to get rid of all leaf pickup, or
To
just
go to a bag
switch
leaf.
from
To switch,
loose
yeah.
to leaf?
Yes.
I mean, to bag?
Yes.
So
Oh,
in other words,
I think-
challenging the notion of level services, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though they're both a leaf pickup.
yeah.
The issue, I think, here is that it's a little different situation now than then. Bill can speak to it better than I, but my understanding is that was, at the time, billed as, this is how much manpower
Yes.
it would cost. And it was on the order of $40,000.
It was $37,000.
And so they said, well, we'd rather keep that extra staff.
Yep, right.
But-
Where now, it's a little bit different conversation, because it's a very clear cost savings,
Yeah.
as opposed to retaining staff or not.
Right.
Well, we really didn't gain anything because I was able to fill a position from somebody who had retired 2 years previously. So, you know, we're back where we started at.
Here.
Right, it wasn't like a staff position was added.
Right.
It was just that it was retained, not cut.
Right,
And then more work.
yes.
Yes.
And now the labor alone is $45,000. I know it's a fixed cost, but we could be doing something more productive than leave. It's very frustrating too, because some of these, a lot of people hire landscapers, and they come here with their trucks that are full, and they dump them, and then they clean their yards, and
Yeah,
so
didn't
there's
they
twice
dump
as many.
stuff at the
I've
cemetery?
caught people doing it before.
It's disgraceful.
No, that was construction.
Oh, yeah. What percentage of the residents use leaf pickup versus landscaping?
Well, a lot of them have landscapers that bring it to the road. They don't haul them away, they just rake them to the road.
We dump ours in the woods, so I don't
That's what
know
I
if
did
it's-
too, yeah. A lot of people dump them in the woods. Some people bring them out of the woods and bring them to the curb. So it's, depends on where you live. I mean, it takes us 3 days to do Morgan and Kimball because there's so many leaves there.
Yeah.
And that's 2 trucks going 8 hours a day, well, 7 hours a day.
And it's pretty much 2 months, start to finish. I mean, plus or
Yep.
minus,
Yeah,
but it's
And that's 2
all
passes.
November and December.
it's a huge resource strain, big demand.
And we do it into January. This year, I think we finished up January 8th.
Yeah.
We hit our parks last.
So it sounds like the leaf pickup is a area to consider, and there's significant savings. And this, I'm just asking questions. There's no intention with any of these questions, but how does the mowing for the schools work? I know we've talked about this before, but I don't remember the details. Do they pay Wenham?
They pay time and material.
Okay, and so is it market rate reimbursement, or do you give them some kind of
No.
discount?
Well, we give them a big discount. It saves them a ton of money.
Yeah.
They just pay us what we pay our employees.
Okay,
So there's no administrative surcharge or fee.
Right.
It's a straight payment for labor and materials. We do have an intermunicipal agreement
Right.
with the school district. As Bill mentioned, that used to include Hamilton up until this fiscal year, when Hamilton was going through their budget process last year. The feedback they gave was it's taking a lot of time away from things we could otherwise be doing. And so they withdrew from the agreement. And
So
so we've but we're not now doing everything that they were doing.
Oh.
Right.
We still do the same amount of days and time, and the schools have had to hire an outside vendor at,
For the high school, middle school.
yeah, 2.5, 3 times the amount is
Yeah.
generally what it is for the savings that the schools are receiving for us providing those services.
right.
And we have a separate revolving account, and we generally see between $15,000 and $20,000 in annual revenues from the fees that we collect.
Which helps greatly. I mean, we haven't had to ask for a mower in years, or landscape trailers, or the mini excavator. We've gotten a lot out of it.
It's all, yeah, all the small DPW capital is paid for from that revolving account.
Just a quick question about back to the leaf. Does the town pay for the bags for residents, or do the residents buy the bags? How does that
Residents
work?
buy the bags.
So
or
it's
the-
like the green bag kind of.
Well, it'll be, the paper bags.
Bags, the tall paper
No, no,
ones.
I know that. but
Right,
you
you
pay-
pay per
Oh,
bag,
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
You
Buy
pay
a
for that.
10-pack or 20-pack at Costco or,
What would a bag cost? I suspect if this comes up to town meeting, people are gonna wanna know.
or like probably 50 cents each or
Yeah,
something. I mean,
they're
you
not
get a
expensive.
10-pack or 20-pack for $5.
Yeah, something like that. I haven't bought them in years, but
Yeah.
they're not real expensive.
Yeah. The town doesn't have the space. I think I asked you this when I moved in, for drop-off, for resident drop-off of leaves, right? Meaning cart them to some place like other towns have, like a, lawn, branches, yard refuse, whatever.
Well, I
grass
mean,
clippings.
we could have them drop them off in Pingree parking lot, but then if they had their landscapers do it, I mean, it
Yeah.
wouldn't accommodate it.
I guess I was asking more on an ongoing basis, more year-round, like towns have year-round.
That would be more like a transfer station.
Yeah.
But not for recycling or trash.
No, but
yeah,
for yard waste.
along those lines.
Yes.
Beverly has one.
Along those
Mine
lines.
is was it, thank you,
Oh, do
on
they?
22 in the mobile station, they just say if you have bags, you can.
Yeah, we don't have the room to take brush. That's the big issue. Leaves, residents can take leaves to Brickens Farm anytime, and there's no charge.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Thank you. The The capital piece, so I was trying to figure out on the
Oh,
summary expenses, it looks like capital's going up 125,000 from 83 to 208. But isn't the only net new ask the 40,000 for 1 year of a 3-year lease on a backhoe? Or what am I missing?
yeah, 40,000 for the backhoe, but what about street maintenance, Peter? Did that, was,
Yeah, so, the reason why that's increasing, let me just pull that out for a second.
Oh, road capital. It's 130.
I don't even have that one.
So the, front end loader is that year 2 payment, $35,000. That was paid for from free cash last year.
Of course.
The Peterbilt truck lease,
Oh, yeah.
3, was paid for with, outside of the budget, and
Also free
also
cash?
free cash.
Okay.
And the highway road capital, 40. So last year, there was $40,000 in the operating budget and 45,000 from free cash for a total of 85,000. We've been, the idea has been that we've been committed to increasing that by $5,000 a year. That's what
Yeah.
we've done over the past several years. So it's a $50,000 increase in road
Right.
capital.
Right.
So, the backhoe and the $50,000 increase in road capital is considered above level services, that cheat sheet that you've got.
Yep.
2-page cheat sheet. The, obviously, ongoing contractual obligations for the Peterbilt and the front end loader,
Yeah.
are, not a choice, so those are in level services.
The only capital above level services is the backhoe ask, right?
The backhoe and the $50,000 increase in road capital. Because
But that's
last
part
year-
of the 90.
As part of the 90,
Part-
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
Right,
of
gotcha.
the 90, 50 is
50,
considered
okay.
above level services, because again, that's new. We funded that with free cash last year, just,
But that's, we funded it last year, it was service to service is still comparable, right? It's just the source of, I mean, it's new in this expense in your budget,
yep,
but the service isn't changing.
the service isn't changing, but we don't have a contractual obligation to pay it, where with the other ones we do. And that's the distinction.
Okay, that's the distinction.
Right, we're saying
Right.
we don't have a choice with these other
Yeah,
ones.
so you're feeling the brunt of these structural moves over to your expense, to your capital
right.
lines, which were previously funded
Like free cash,
by free
right?
cash, yeah.
Are we getting less money from the state for the road repair?
Nope, we've been pretty consistent with Chapter 90 funds at $150,000. It's based on road miles. It's a formula grant. They have a few times in the past couple of years did a one-time boost to that number, but at minimum, we receive $150,000 a year. And just while we're on that, we're down to $50,000 for our remaining balance of prior year Chapter 90 funds. And we'll get another $150,000 this year. That $50,000 balance includes $60,000 that we just went under contract for to do some of the kind of the first phase of design work for the Main Street traffic project. So, and we are still working hard to secure funds from the state, even for the next phase of design. They've said, that they will, in one form or fashion, pay for the construction, but 25% design. Their initial communications back to us is that we're going to have to fund that. That's $250,000 total. So we paid the first installation of that, but there's $190,000 delta. Hopeful that the legislative delegation will be able to find a way to pay that outside of our Chapter 90 funds, because if we did that, we basically would have no Chapter 90 funds for all of next year.
Right.
And then we'd be starting the following year with a zero balance, so just $150,000, which doesn't get us that far.
What's it cost for our share of the design? 65? Wait, no, what?
250.
250 is a quarter? Design is $1 million?
No, so 250, 25% design is a little bit of a misnomer.
Oh, okay.
That's basically at least 50, if not 75% design in reality. But that's the threshold that the state wants us to get it to, and then they'll move it forward from there.
Sounds like it's a good faith commitment on behalf of the community to really.
Yeah, that's part of it. But we've had the conversation with them around, order of magnitude, what our funding capacity is with Chapter 90 money versus, what they have statewide at MassDOT. So hopefully we can prevail on them for the rest. I mean, $60,000 is still a pretty significant contribution, frankly, on our part.
Yeah, it is, for a state highway.
Yeah, when it's ultimately a state highway.
Your backhoe cost is a total of 40 grand.
That's the first year of the lease, yeah. It's a 3-year lease.
So we're talking total is 120 plus?
So the Weston and Sampson, the 50,000 for the outsourcing of the work to them, with an additional laborer, you wouldn't necessarily be able to do all of that work. It's that.
The labor is just an entry-level position
Right.
who would help with the leaf pickup and the mowing mostly.
Free up some capacity.
Yes.
But it's really the leaf pickup, eliminating that altogether. You think you could go after the Weston and Sampson
Yes.
work that we're outsourcing.
Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't need an extra body because I'd, have the manpower.
Are there any permitting concerns in terms of the work that we do versus outsourcing to paying big bucks for the kind of fancy stamp on it for an established firm? Like if we do it in-house, do we run the risk of it not being?
Oh, no.
So the idea would be that they'd go out there the first time through and train our folks to do
Yeah,
it.
they'll train us for the first round,
Yeah.
which is minimal, and then we get qualified guys in-house who can do it. They just need to know where.
Yeah.
We're still going to be paying Weston and Sampson for stormwater compliance
Mm-hmm.
Right.
relative to the administrative.
That's the other budgeted piece.
Yeah, but
Similar amount, right?
What's that?
Similar amount?
No. So that amount would come down significantly.
Okay.
The administrative component's actually pretty small. The big
Yeah.
chunk of the cost in years 2 and 3 is all of the sampling work.
Right. Full faith that you guys could do it right
Oh, yeah.
and properly, just a matter of whether or not the
Oh, yeah.
state would then say, oh, no, you can't do this yourself. You need to be.
No, it would have to be the foreman and the group leader, the two guys that, have already been trained a little bit on it, and we've been showing them what we need to do, but we need to be a little more specific on what the state is looking for, and that's where Weston and Sampson come in. Anything else?
Any other questions? So on the backhoe, what's it preventing you from doing now, not having it?
Well,
Or-
we have a backhoe, but it's, like I said, it's 12 years old, and it's getting costly to maintain. We don't plow with it anymore, since we had the new loader, but it's, but it's showing its age, and I forget what we spent on it last year, but I want to say it was around $8,000 in repairs.
And the purchase of the mini excavator back when we made that decision 3 years ago, 2+ years ago, the idea behind it was, at the time,
Prolong the life.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
going to prolong the life. of
And it did.
And it did. It got us another, 3+ years.
Yeah.
And you'll get a lot more years out of the mini excavator.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's still.
Yep.
Great check. Okay.
Do you want snow removal?
Sounds good.
423? Snow removal is level funded. I didn't change a thing on it.
So we have a dedicated employee for snow removal, is that what that 36,000
That's for salaries,
salary?
for all of the guys, for when they work overtime to plow. The $70,000, it covers, repairs, which, really ends up coming out of vehicle maintenance more than this. But the contracted plow trucks, $15,000. They get paid $65 an hour for a regular plow and $75 if they have a 9-foot plow. $4,000 for sand, salt, $47,000. Ice ban, which actually that went up quite a bit this year. I got my first delivery in 2 years. That's the liquid ice melt we use with, with the sanders that are in saddle tanks, and we spray it on there. You have to have it when it's this cold, because ice stops working at around 20 degrees. So we get, that's about every other year, but I just paid $2,600 for a delivery yesterday.
So you pay other people to plow? Or
Yes.
am I
When
thinking-
we get like over 6 inches of snow, I call in private contractors, and they come in and plow with us, because you got to shorten the routes if it's really coming down. If you're getting a lot of snow, then you need to have shorter routes to keep up with it.
That's the case
Yeah,
pretty much
yeah.
everywhere.
Mm.
Okay.
Hires out.
Are you budgeting enough? If I look at the actuals? I know it's a funny question, but if I
There's-
look at
it's a
prior
good question,
years-
yeah.
Prior
But it-
years.
Yeah, so
We keep it low.
the primer on snow and ice here and everywhere is it's generally always underfunded.
That's right, that's right. We did
Whenever
last year.
Yeah.
you increase
Go back to the well.
whenever you increase the line item, it
Did
can't be
last year.
decreased. Whatever it was funded at the previous year, you can only keep it the same or increase it
For snow and ice?
for snow and ice.
What is it that you can't decrease? This departmental bottom line?
Yep.
Inclusive of everything, salt, sand, contracted?
Mhm.
Statutorily prohibited from decreasing that line item ever.
Then you just use free cash if you went over.
So generally, what we've done historically is it's part of the year-end transfer process.
Ah, that's
we've,
right.
we've been able to cover the costs, either with other DPW lines or other departmental lines. And it's the one line item that you can actually go over and put it on next year's tax rate. If you don't have it, and that was back 4 years ago. That was something that actually a lot of municipalities ended up doing, because their snow and ice costs were double, triple what they had budgeted, and they just didn't have any way to absorb that dramatic of an increase.
And just so you know, at this point of the year, we're halfway through that 70,000, and it's been a mild winter. But we have a full shed of salt and sand.
Just getting the trucks ready and all the materials, you're like a third of the way through the budget
Right.
almost.
Just
Just
right.
starting out the gate.
Yeah, you're always behind it.
And I try to do everything in-house, including plowing, but that really turns a lot of the private contractors away. I've lost quite a few of them. They'll go to Hamilton, who calls them in for every storm, or Beverly or somewhere where they need more than we do. So keeping them, it's hard to do, while maintaining this budget. I don't call them in enough.
How many do we call on? How many trucks
I
roughly?
have 4.
4 trucks.
When I started, we had 8.
How many road miles do we have?
33,
33.
right around 33, 34.
Private contractors carry their own insurance and.
Yes. Yes. They use their own fuel. Anything else?
Snow and ice? Questions? Facilities? What do you want to do
Facility-
next, Bill?
Well, facilities, 192.
Okay.
So the increase in facilities is for building staff. Somebody who can work 19 hours a week at $25 an hour. And that's to help our facility director get things done. Whether it's painting or any kind of construction. We have a lot going on in the summertime between all of the buildings, maintaining the septic systems and the buildings themselves. We try to get on a painting schedule where, like, we did 2 halves of this building the last 2 years, and we're maintaining the library as well. A lot of roof work. And so if he had a helper, it's a lot, he gets a lot done. He puts out fires all day, so it's hard for him to find time to get to the projects. And so we have 2 summer workers who do the paint, and he has usually this person work with them to oversee it and help them out while he tackles the bigger projects.
That's Jim.
Yes.
And so the new staff that you're requesting is building staff, 25 hours?
$25 an hour for
$25.
19 hours a week, and
19,
that's
yeah.
where this number comes in, 24,000 annually. And we're not asking for capital. But we're asking for an increase in the building and grounds expense. An increase of $8,900 over last year. And that's just the cost of, mainly the cost of outside contractors. I would say mostly it's HVAC and control related. Boiler controls, building controls.
Just a reminder that in the building and ground expense line, we've got the $5,000 not to exceed
yeah.
line item for the energy manager.
Yes.
That's the shared energy manager with Hamilton and the schools. And she handles all the green communities reporting, and then any grant applications and projects that we're planning to put in for, and we've got a couple queued up. We weren't eligible the past few years while the school was completing a green communities project that we were the sponsor of, and so she's been, you know, relatively quiet in terms of the work that she's done
Yeah.
for the town, but Bill has a couple larger projects that we're hoping to get her involved in, so. But it's a pay-as-you-go basis. It's just a not-to-exceed number based on an hourly rate. Technically, she's a Hamilton employee. The hourly rate's $32 an hour.
Something like that, yeah.
Something around that. And she's been with us since we became a green community.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, no, she saves a lot of money. She's the one who got the streetlights in, and which saves, what, $28,000 a year?
That's awesome.
More than that.
More than that.
Yeah, it's like $35,000, $40,000 a year.
Okay, wow.
Works.
We're looking at changing all the lights in all the buildings to LEDs. That's the one we're applying for this year.
Yeah. What are these, CFL? These
Yeah.
bricks?
Well, no, these aren't compacts, no. These are 4-foot fluorescents,
They are?
T8s, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But we're looking at LEDs in every building, which should be huge. We're doing an evaluation right now, Monday, in all the buildings to see what the savings will be.
Okay. Bill, are you, just real quick, in the expenses, are you budgeting for like small repairs, or is it mostly maintenance on things like Johnson Controls, generator?
Yeah. It's, well, you know, you have to have money for that, and a lot of the HVAC, the tech.
You see the big one, yeah.
Yeah, and same with the generators. The generator company comes in, they maintain the generators and come in for any time there's a breakdown. And electricians, we don't hire a lot of plumbers. A lot of it we do in-house unless it's a major issue. But we have an electrician on call that we use. So that all falls into that.
Okay.
And materials, that includes the cleaning for here.
The
Isn't that-
clean team?
Yeah, so the
It's
clean team,
20
yeah, so
oh.
that's, you know, we don't have in-house custodial services. We
Right.
sub all that out. So the clean team covers that $25,000 line item, covers cleaning town hall, the COA, the fire, and the police station.
Oh,
And we pay for the cleaning material, that's for $7,400 comes in.
Got it.
Where they clean town hall, fire, police, and those?
COA.
Okay.
And what are all the facilities that are in the Wenham facilities? Town hall, COA, fire, police, your building,
Iron Rail, COA.
iron rail? Is there anything?
We oversee the library, but they have their own maintenance budget, but we do all the
Okay.
repairs in there, and
Okay.
we spend a lot of time in there.
So does that include, but library capital, like HVAC would be in the library budget,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
So the library expenses are in the library budget. Conversation that we've had this past year in particular is that this position spends a fair amount of their time doing work over at the library, and that's not necessarily accounted for in the library budget.
Oh.
Which, you know, obviously Hamilton would pay their share of. It's not in the intermunicipal agreement, so we would have to revise the agreement to clarify that. But I think, you know, Bill can certainly speak to it. You know, that is by far of all of the buildings, the one that needs the most time and attention.
Absolutely.
Probably
Biggest and most complex, you had the elevator.
half
Yeah.
of that person's time, plus or minus, is devoted
Pretty
to the
close.
library.
Jim's time?
Yes.
But doesn't the IMA cover just library structure facilities maintenance? I mean,
Yeah, so I did look at the IMA, and it's not, it was drafted a long time ago now, 20 years, really. And so that's one of the things that isn't clear, that probably should be for fairness, and from a fairness perspective.
Well, when I worked with the schools and our library opened, they paid me a $5,000 stipend to do all the maintenance there. And they never budgeted for it when they came to Wenham. And so it kind of just fell in our lap. I still went over there all the time, and then we had a facility person, and they kind of just took it over. So that's how it happened.
so sounds like we may want to revisit that IMA, maybe BOS. So we would look at it too.
The elevator costs are just the library, is that right?
No, the elevator in this building.
Oh, the elevator, just, of course.
Must
Just
be.
maintenance and service.
Yes, we have a monthly service, and then we have the state inspection and the weight test and everything else that goes along with it.
Okay, so facilities is 200, including the additional part-time staff. What does that leave us with?
Tree warden?
Tree warden.
That's $294. Tree warden, we're asking for additional tree removal and tree planting of $3,000. This seems to never be enough money for that. And there's also a increase of $33.20 for the base salary of the tree warden. That's 2%? Peter, is that what that one is?
Yeah.
2% COLA.
On the stipend. Did you say 3,000? I see 1,000 for trees. Addition,
I have 3.
I have 2, or 1, excuse me.
so where is your 3,000 on the,
5,800.
I have 10.
okay, so,
I have
so,
10.
Well, 10, we went from 10 to 3, I thought. I don't know, I haven't seen one. I
okay,
mean, $1,000, that's one tree.
This says.
Two trees.
Yeah, depending on how big they are.
Yeah.
oh, that's on
It's on
salary and
salary
wages.
for
Sorry,
$1,000.
sorry. It's in salary for
So in
1,000.
salary for 1,000
Yeah.
is,
Oh,
yeah, so that's basically for the, if you remember, because of the additional work
Yep.
of coordinating the tree planting projects, picking
Right.
the species, working with the residents on where they were gonna go and,
Yeah.
and all that. Included in the RFT at the end of last fiscal year was that $1,000 increase for the tree warden position as long as we were gonna be committed to that tree planting program. So that's what that line is on the salaries. It's basically it's increasing the overall compensation for the tree warden position from the $1,600 and change to $2,700. But the tree plantings,
It used to be 7 maybe, was it?
nope,
No.
was 0, and now
Yeah.
it's 10.
And now it's 10.
Which is, again, one of those, at this point, above level services, that's new and different. It was not budgeted in FY19. We used the, reserve funds from 18 to do plantings this year. We've done about half of the plantings, little over half. There's another 8 or so to do in the spring.
Yes, yep.
That was
But-
also 10,000 last year out of free cash?
It was 10,000, not from free cash, it was from the reserve
Oh,
fund.
overlay reserves.
FY18 reserve fund transfer.
Oh,
We did a
RFT.
year- Yeah, we did an
Yeah,
RFT.
yeah.
And the idea, is that we're gonna be committed to planting 20 new street trees a year, and it's, depending on the tree, it averages out about $500 a tree, start to finish.
So you're keeping it at 10 grand?
Well, it's a new,
Yeah.
it's an
new.
it's an addition
Mhm.
to the FY20 budget because it wasn't in FY18 or 19.
Was the 24 also new for the
No,
23?
24's been there forever.
So technically,
Okay.
I don't, oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
No, I was just doing the tree removal, that was 24.
Yes,
That's not new,
that's not.
no, I
No.
don't think so, okay. Go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
No, no worries, Mike, I cut you off. So anything that we aren't obligated to fund this year that we did pay for out of free cash last year, if we presented in one form a level services budget, obviously it wouldn't include those things.
Yeah, so that's where level services is a
Yeah.
little bit of a misnomer.
Yep.
Right, so we've talked about just tonight, the road capital
Right.
and the tree removal as things that are effectively level services, but aren't included in that budget at this point. But could certainly be added back in and still be considered level services. It would just mean that our capacity to fund the school assessment would reduce, so the school operating override would increase.
Could you just talk to the language and the rationale, Bill? Just so I understand.
Well, yeah, that's from the tree warden.
Yep. It talks about the assessment document as, by a third party that is fiscally cumbersome, yet, quote, binding in a legal sense. What's that
Well, we had Bartlett Tree come in and assess,
last year? I remember
Yes.
that.
Yep, so they did this comprehensive assessment,
Yep.
and gave us a report and said, you basically have to, remove, was it 40%?
it's somewhere around there.
Yeah, so remove a substantial portion of your trees and maintain the rest. And so my sense in talking to Win about this is, what he's saying is, we have a report now that says that these trees are hazard trees, they're dead and they need to be removed. So it puts us in a position where if we're not following up and removing them, then, that's not necessarily putting us, I think that, probably not in a legal sense, but certainly, optically.
So the town has some exposure,
Yeah,
some liability exposure at this.
I don't think,
Potentially.
potentially, it's more just saying, it's been publicly acknowledged that, these.
That we have some problems.
That we have some hazard trees and we should be doing something about it.
Right.
Dumb question, these aren't trees on people's properties, these
No.
are roadside trees.
Yes,
Yeah.
and in the parks and cemeteries.
Okay.
And I did, in the past month or so, get a report from Sheila, on, kind of a status update on the tree removals and tree plantings from that RFT. And a significant portion of the ones that were identified have been removed at this point. There's still 10, 12 on the scenic roads
Right.
that we held back on until we got through the winter to see kind of where we were relative to.
Well, we try to save some money in case we have a huge blizzard that takes down trees and we need to use it for that,
Yeah, that's,
because we get caught before.
Iron Tree did the scenic tree removal, right? Is that-
We put it out to bid. Actually, I've been asking Mayor and Iron Tree and Sequoia to bid on it, so it's been all three.
Did they end up getting they ground them down? They ground the
Yes.
stumps late, and then they left did they end up taking the chips? Because they like
We
along
did
Cedar,
that.
Oh, you did?
We picked them up, yes.
Did you know you were gonna be doing that?
Well, it saves a lot of money if we do that. If you do, they just grind them. We don't have a stump grinder, otherwise we'd do it.
Sure. Yeah.
I just tell them to leave the mess and we picked them up.
Got it. Yeah, that looks great.
Anything else?
This is a little off the side, but I notice on my walks that down at Miles River, the beavers are very busy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I've dropped 3 trees, fortunately, into the water and not onto the road.
I know.
Is there anything that can be?
We've got a
Is there a break on this?
a
We're working.
large meeting scheduled for next week.
Yeah.
Cover
So
darkness,
I've met with Bill and the animal control officer and the planner about what we can do and when we can do it. Short answer is we've got a 1-week window, which can be extended out to 30 days every year to
Trap.
and once that opens and closes, you cannot do anything for another year. Another 365 days. So we're looking at May now, I think,
Yeah.
and coordinating with Gordon a little bit better than we have in years previously.
Gordon
College, because they have
Right by the property, yeah.
a fair amount of beavers
Oh, yeah.
on their property as well, so.
Hmm.
Those are big trees.
They are. There's one now that's ready to come down again. I don't know if you saw that one, but we're gonna be winching those out in the spring.
Mm.
There's a huge eyesore.
Yeah.
You just like drop them somewhere?
Say it loud on camera.
Yep, they are.
I have
They're
a
crazy.
question. So this initiatives for FY 2020 at the end of the narrative,
Hmm?
it's talking about 2021. So it also says in address FY 2021 in the summer of FY 20. And it looks like an additional reduction will be anticipated. Based on,
Based on their reevaluation.
for the
I'm
assessment
gonna
window.
assume he means that, by then we'll have most of the, most hazardous trees down, and so we can reduce it.
Yeah, and it already went down a fair amount,
It should,
FY 20.
yeah. It should every year, well, until we get caught up completely.
And we have been using National Grid as much as we can.
Yep.
They've done a lot of work down the Grapevine area with all of the
yeah,
outage
yeah.
issues
Yep.
that they've had. They've been
Yep.
very aggressive in trying to trim back.
Yeah, we make deals with them sometimes where we'll tell them, go ahead and leave that, and can you take this tree down, something where you need a bucket truck that we don't have, and then we'll clean up their mess, and they take down trees for us. So, we work well with them.
Good.
Any other questions for Bill? Bill, oh, go ahead.
No.
No. I was just gonna say, thanks for we've got the memo as well, which was
Oh, good.
provided previously that you sent to Peter, so we'll all make sure that we're up
Yeah,
to speed.
those numbers are a little different, because I did that in December before we were done. So those numbers increased a little bit in
I
January.
think we gave both memos.
Okay, good.
And I
We did
don't,
a follow-up memo.
and I guess
We'll make
that
sure.
if it does go to town meeting, I don't know, or if it's a policy decision with respect to whether or not we go from curb to pick up to bags, or how that all works.
I would
mean,
imagine if that's gonna be on the table, that's gonna be discussed when the selectmen and the FinCom have their end of the budget
Look,
wrap up.
you look forward to that, I can tell. You're excited.
I wasn't
gonna wanna leave.
here the last time this was discussed, but I
I
heard it
was.
was interesting.
I don't remember talking about it. I love the curbside pickup. I can appreciate all the hassle and extra work.
Listen,
Yeah, I'm not looking for it to go away, but I get the reality.
Gotta be some expedient, efficient way to shove all the leaves in a bag quickly.
I've got the biggest Red Max. What am I gonna do with that? You know, it's great. It's a beast.
Yeah.
We have the same.
Yeah. You had a question?
No, I don't. Thank you, no.
I believe I'm doing iron rail too.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh.
great. 199.
I was gonna say less trees, less leaves.
Yeah, I'm taking down a bunch because we've got so many mature trees. I mean, you know, you drive by your house every day.
Yeah, we took down a bunch.
The biggest change in this one is the cleaning costs. We used to have a person come in an hour every day and 7 days a week. And so we budgeted his salary, but that person doesn't work anymore. So we're having the same company who does this building and the police and fire and COA, they're doing it at a cost of $8,500 a year. So that's where you see the increase there.
Right. So is it reflected the person who used to do it?
It's more costly.
Sorry?
More expensive to sub it
Yeah.
out.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's just, it's such a part-time, position that it's hard to fill with.
1 hour day, yeah.
Yeah. But the 6973 reduction, that's what we're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah. I was gonna ask why it wasn't the same company that, Clean Team.
So that's pretty much the biggest change.
The iron rail costs are absorbed by the fees that we encounter.
So,
Fair to say? Oh,
yeah, so these, the operating budget for the iron rail, is included in the $46,000 that's proposed for FY '20 is, in the general fund. It's paid for out of the general budget, but it's more than offset by the revenues.
By the
So
revenues.
we bring in, about $150,000 gross in rental revenues.
And some of that goes to the capital fund.
Yeah.
And a reserve. for the-
Yeah, so now, for the past few years, we've set up that rental revolving fund, and the one change that we're proposing to bring to town meeting this year is to increase that cap from the $25,000 that had been set last year to $30,000. And that's so that, the Iron Rail Commission will have about $5,000, in available funds for, miscellaneous, smaller capital needs. You remember, we went to a town meeting last year and got approval for just under $250,000, to bond out to do paving,
Roof.
and the roof work, roof replacement.
Sign.
And, yeah, the sign was separate from that. The bonding was just for the roof and the paving. And given the amount of debt issuance for the project, we're just gonna be doing a 10-year ban, so our annual debt payments are higher than what we had originally projected. We thought we were gonna do it over 15 years, maybe like $18,000 a year. But shrinking it down to 10 years, it's pretty much that full 25,000, so we had anticipated having a little bit of a cushion the way that we had projected out before, and then after town meeting for Southwest said, no, it can only be out for 10 years. So that's why we're looking to increase.
Increasing it for the terms.
When is the entrance way? In spring?
Next spring.
Yeah, in the spring, all the paving will be done in the spring, hopefully April, May at the latest.
So where are you going to the right, to the soccer fields, or that
No.
was dirt? Or-
No, well, no, we're not going past the gate. We're going to pave right up to the gate and then around the iron rail, the parking lot, and all the way to the stop sign where the highway garage is.
Okay, thank you.
And then the parking lot, which has never been paved, will be
Mhm.
fully paved.
In the back.
Right.
Yeah, in the back, behind the brick building.
Yeah.
The T-ball field we used.
Cemetery entrance.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And there is a increase of $1,700 to cover gas and electric increases.
All right, any other questions for Bill on Iron Rail? Thanks for covering all the departments.
You're welcome. Thank God I don't do cemetery anymore.
One more first. Quick one.
Hi, Gary.
Good evening. So cemeteries, if we're ready. Line 5100, salaries and wages. So it's a burial agent stipend, same as the 19 with the 2% increase. And then the second line is a new line added to account for overtime for burials after work hours or on Saturdays, which are more frequent. In the workday week, that's counted as DPW wages, but after weekends, it's overtime, so we did not have a previous way to track that.
So that's new from last year, right?
A new line, yes, but not a new expense because it was being just paid out of the expense line previously.
The cemetery care line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then number 3 is $1,000 for utilities. That includes the water, telephone, and electricity bills for the cemetery. $300 for the preservation documents with town clerk's office. Diane's major help. We have now preserved the old burial book. We have a new burial book for Iron Rail. And this money will go to preserve the records upstairs with Sheila, which have to be preserved by law. We talked with the state archivist and asked him if we can't go electronic, and he says no. By law, cemetery records have to remain copies in paper. So this $300 pays for the sleeves and so forth in the binders. $1,600 for repair of Main Street cemetery buildings and fence. So that's mainly for the back fence that butts up against the Wenham Golf Club. And Michael will tell you he volunteered to help on the repairs with a community project from the school last year, so that needs work. And we need a back wall of the maintenance building and gutter replaced on the maintenance building at Main Street. We're off to the side for a second here. We've had CPA money in the past that in 3 different groups has paid for the restoration of the gravestones, erecting, cleaning, and so forth. Going forward, we'll include in line 6 there is we intend to use our own in-house effort to do the cleaning of the stones. If there's a toppled stone, we would have to go outside, but we have that after the spring up to date on that. So the materials include the materials needed for the underlayment of the gravestones, for the boarding and fake turf that goes around the cemetery site, and for the cleaner, which will be ongoing. Line 7 is $900 for contract wages. That will primarily include the cleaning of the stones going forward. And the number 8 is the cemetery's 1/3 share of the excavator last year to pay that off. No capital requirements. Intentions, so that covers the expense line. The cemetery does have the perpetual care line, which we're holding back for mostly tree work we expect. Last year we had a $2,850 bill for the 2 main trees on the Main Street going in on the left drive. We already know one more tree up at the top of the hill will be gone. So expect the perpetual care fund will cover the tree work, and then the Perkins fund, or whatever's left over from the income of the perpetual care fund, we intend to use for a small maintenance shed at the iron rail, which will alleviate the problem of the DPW having to transport all the equipment for each burial back and forth to Main Street.
Do you still have money, I'm assuming you do, but in the other funds, or is it being depleted? I mean, because you just mentioned perpetual care fund.
Well, yeah, the perpetual care, you can't touch the principal, but we earn some interest depending on the rate of return each year. And that we're holding right now for tree work, which we know we're probably going to have. And then there's the Perkins, which was a gift fund, which is dedicated to the cemeteries. And that's what we would propose from the commission this year to use to do the maintenance shed at Iron Rail. In return, the funds from the sale of lots, as we went through last year, half of that goes to the cemetery, half goes to the sale of lot funds, which you've drawn down on occasion. And the DPW work is in the big circle compensated for, because the fees that are charged for grave openings and closing go into the town's general fund.
And then we normally do a transfer on the order of,
Yeah.
$5,000, $7,000, $8,000 to offset depending on, what they've brought in for revenues. To Mike's point, we don't want to deplete that down too much, but something on that order to compensate for the fact that it costs about $30,000 a year in labor for the DPW to do everything they do up in the cemeteries for us.
Questions?
No, thank you for
Right.
for detailing the line item.
Yep, there you
So
go.
just the one expense, and the rationale for each one is great.
All right.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, police are up next. Chief Perkins and Captain DiNapoli,
Yes. Thank you for having us.
thanks for joining.
I know that some of you were actually at the Board of Selectmen presentation. Before we kind of focus in on what we're hoping to accomplish, are there any kind of questions from reviewing the data ahead of time before we get going, or just get right to it?
I mean, the big theme this year is looking for a new full-time officer, right, to reduce the dependence on part-time officers, in particular with an eye on eliminating that, there being the only two on staff at certain points in time.
Yeah,
As you've mentioned in the past and reiterated, that's practice you want to get away from.
absolutely.
And through attrition, you might not need to backfill with an additional with those part-time officers.
Yeah, we would actually be
Overtime.
looking to reduce the reserve force, significantly from 16 officers. Presently, we have 14 now, but we're slotted for 16. Our goal would be to get down to 10.
With the full-time position.
With the full-time position, correct, yeah. Yeah. When I first started, we had 9 full-time officers and 8 reserve officers. And as you can see, we didn't grow systematically. We've only added 1 full-time position since 1989. We've had to add reserve officers to keep up with the demand and the needs for services and such. But we've just found we're using them too much. They work together far too often for my comfort level. We did some numbers, and although we work 3 shifts every day.
Scheduling problem, though?
It is at times. We're struggling right now, and we're anticipating it being very challenging as we're about to send 2 new full-time officers to the academy for about a 6-month period. And, that's when you really see it, when you're trying to backfill all those open shifts. But, the addition of that full-time officer would be great in that situation for sure. It's time. I mean, I've been standing up here since 2008 as captain and then as chief, reiterating the same thing, that, you know, there's an inherent liability using reserve officers too much. They're not trained to the same level. We do the absolute best we can to train them once they're out of the academy at the same level as all our full-time officers. But it's about a 3-to-1 ratio with hours and such while they're in the reserve academy versus the full-time academy. It's 300 and something hours to 900 and something hours, just to give you some sort of a difference there. Probably the most important point I really want to drive home is the fact of the opportunity that we have right now. I mentioned, been doing the budget for 10 years, been here for over 30. The stars have never aligned just like they have right now, where we have the 2 openings at the exact same time, thereby reducing the salary line with those 2 new officers coming in at only 80% of their salary versus replacing officers that were at 100 and 110% of their salary. It's not likely to happen again anytime soon. The other thing that we should probably consider is at least the possibility of us staying with the RECC up in Middleton, the dispatch center, and the state taking over, and approximately $88,000, I believe. Just my humble, respectful opinion, that money would be, you know, well-served, reinvested in public safety. We're really only looking for 20,000 of it and change. So, you know, I really can't stress the timing and the opportunity. I realize that many departments have made requests this year, and I respect that. Everybody has their own needs. We have the need and the opportunity. The fire department is up and coming with their ambulance. It's probably only a matter of time before they'll be requesting full-time people. It'd be kind of nice to at least have the police department stabilized for, you know, sometime down the road with that one additional full-time person.
What would that bring the FTEs to, 10 point something?
The what?
What would that bring the FTEs to?
Oh, full-time? I would go from 10 to 11. 10 to 11. And we do have some data here.
From 10 to 11. 10 to 11.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Well, no, not FTEs, full-time.
Full,
Yeah.
non-reserve.
Not equivalent, sorry, FTE sometimes uses full-time equivalent.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah, so full-time employees would go from 10 to 11.
Correct.
And the reserves would go from 16
to 14 immediately.
And then down to 12, and then eventually down to 10. That's kind of the goal.
And that 11, you had that breakout of equivalent full-time staff. That would put us in the ballpark of the measurements that you had there.
We do have some data here. Not sure if you got the memo to me from Captain DiNapoli. We handed out the last time. Did it make it?
It might be in the packet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, that basically breaks it down by similar-sized communities around us. And when you do the average of that, it comes out to 11.8 full-time people, which is always a little comical for the 0.8, but you get the point with that. And then the second page of that, the full-time, the FBI study puts it at, 14 officers or 12.5 based on the national average. The FBI study, those are patrol officers too. That doesn't include the captain and I for administrative purposes. So we're under the glide path. I know Middleton is adding people this year, or attempting to. Obviously, they haven't yet. Topsfield is looking to add personnel. Hamilton is looking to add an SRO. So it's kind of a sign of the times. Law enforcement is getting far more challenging, far more busy. You see that in the news every day, unfortunately. Far more dangerous.
How is, a little bit of tangent, how's the ALICE program going in the school?
I'm gonna let Captain DiNapoli field that with the ALICE program. We're actually participating in it today, so.
It's going great. We have a schedule straight through the end of this school year. We met with the superintendent today as an after-action review, as we ran several drills yesterday at the middle school and the high school, a joint effort between the Hamilton Police Department and our agency. and it was more than we ever could have asked for relative to the feedback from the teachers. It was incredibly positive, back and forth dialogue, very, very cooperative, very engaged. We were continuing to, with our overall goal to streamline everyone in the district. All the schools, all the administrators, we're gonna get the other schools. So far, the high school and the middle school teachers are involved, and we're gonna spread that out to the elementary schools. We're following the regular Alice curriculum. Yeah, a bunch of us got trained in August to train the trainer that we hosted here in town, and we're using those skills. Can't say enough good things about it. It was far longer than I wish we could have gotten in town sooner, and I think we're making positive strides.
Great.
I'm confused.
How can I help?
It is good. It is confusing from a staffing and scheduling perspective.
Yes. So let's try it this way. 10 officers,
Yes.
2 reserves.
No.
Okay, there we go, there's confusion.
Presently,
Present.
we have 10 full-time officers. We're slotted for 16 reserves.
I know, just, oh, okay.
We have 14.
Okay, so you have 14 reserves.
Yes. So what our immediate ask is to add 1 full-time officer and not fill the 2 open reserve spots.
And then through attrition, a pair down.
Attrition of,
Reserve officers.
Leave.
so you want to eliminate all reserve officers?
No, we just want to get down to 10. But the department will never, I can't imagine, function without reserve officers. We're just trying to make it so that the full-time officers, we'll always have 1 full-time officer on a shift, instead of sometimes having 2 part-time officers.
So your goal is 11 and 10.
Correct. Yep.
And so you're at 14 reserve officers now, even though you normally would have 16?
Yes, we just promoted 2 from the reserve list.
Right.
And we're
And you haven't
hoping
filled
not to
those 2,
backfill
right,
those if
right.
we're successful with this.
The reserve officer salaries are just in a roll-up, right? They're not individually line itemed as are the full-time, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
But you
but it
do have the
doesn't say.
detail on that.
Yeah.
There's a whole salary reserve worksheet that
That's right,
just
that's right.
covers the cost of, for all of
Got
the
it.
different elements. Training,
Yeah.
time off, sick, court, administrative, all of those fixed costs. So those costs aren't necessarily gonna change whether you have 14 reserves or 12 reserves.
Can't take the average.
Actually, it's
Right.
increasing. So I got a 38,000, this is where I'm getting confused. On the salary, we got a 68 plus increase. So getting rid of 2, adding 1 is an increase.
So,
I'm
but on the
saving
salary reserve, the
that's-
reserve line, you're reducing that by 38,000.
Correct.
So I'm looking, here's where I'm getting all confused. So if I look under salary and wages, police, I see an increase of 68,980. So I get rid of 2, add 1, and it costs me more.
Well, a lot of that $68,000 is for COLAs.
Yeah, oh, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah,
still not getting any
That's
savings.
the all-in
Yeah,
salary
so
and
that
wages.
includes all of that's the up to 2% merit for the captain and the chief,
Yeah.
and COLAs for the entire department, and the new officer. So the new officer
Yeah,
will cost
yep.
about $20,000 net more
Right.
than if we don't add a new full-time officer.
Yep.
That's
So of that 70,000, then 69,9 is approximately 20,000 is the cost of the new FTE after the officer.
That's right.
the reserve reduction.
That's right.
And the rest is COLAs, contractual.
Yep, step raises,
step
COLAs,
raises.
yes.
Sorry, when you say after the reserve reduction, when we talk about the, you have 14 now, so are you budgeting for 16 or budgeting for 14?
It depends which column you look under. For our regular level service budget,
Yep.
Yep.
we're budgeting for 16.
Oh.
Got it.
If you look at the 11th officer and the changes, and the far column over to the right, that would be the 14.
Right, because you're budgeting for 16, you don't have 16. But you're budgeting for 16 with the hopes you would get to it.
No, the budget we are presenting is for 14 officers
Yep.
with the addition of the 11th officer.
Right.
If that doesn't happen, we would fall back to the second column, which would be our level service budget as is, and that would include the 16.
reserves.
Okay.
Right,
All right.
thank you. Okay.
Sure.
And the one thing I do, just for clarity's sake, and it's again on the cheat sheet, that you all have, is that $21,000 difference for that 11th officer increase does not include the health insurance, which that new officer may or may not take, which has been
Totally.
budgeted in the health insurance line at $16,000. So it's, you know, if you want to look at an all-in, it's up to
38,
30.
30, whatever.
Yep.
Does it include, no, go ahead, you go ahead first.
I was just gonna say, and that's, you said that's in the health insurance
Yep.
line already
Correct. It is.
for the all-in. Yep.
And that would obviously drop out if that position didn't make it there. And we don't know, as we talked about for that line, you know, can't crystal ball with the new hire if they're gonna need it or not.
Does it also include the budget for overtime for that extra person?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, we accounted for that.
You typically, in that position, chief, would you hire a so-called new officer, or newly out of the academy officer? What if an officer came with 10 years' experience, and said, he's the right guy for the
Well,
job?
that's a very good question. It is something that we are looking at and considering, where we're already presently sending 2 officers at the same time through the academy.
Yeah.
That would definitely be something that we would be willing to concede to help save costs and move forward.
The other thing, just for everybody to remember, again, the way the police union contract is structured is they come in at 80% of their salary.
Right.
And then every year they go up 5% their first 4 years. So they get to
4 years to get to 100%.
Correct. And then from there, it's 2% increases outside of COLAs every 5 years.
Correct.
And with low turnover among full-time officers, that's what you're speaking to, the alignment
Yep.
of the Sun, Moon, and Stars with 2.
Yeah, 2 simultaneously is
At
a very rare
80%.
thing. Yeah.
You might have one at 85 and one at 95, but 2
Yep.
at 80 is
Yep.
with the size of your force,
Yep.
meaningful.
And the police union contract is expiring in June. This is on the table right now, no secret. And, you know, the ask back is obviously to ensure that on every shift, there's a minimum of 1 full-time officer, so that we don't ever put ourselves in a position where overnights, weekends, which is a lot the case now, there are 2 reserves working alone together.
I mean, I'm pretty much.
I'm sorry, I'll let you finish, sir.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'm pretty much obligated to kind of try to go down that path regardless of whether we get the 11th officer or not, as far as limiting whether there's 2 reserves working together or not. The only other way to do it, folks, is overtime, and I would feel very confident in telling you it will cost more than $24,000 in overtime to fulfill that obligation. So there's still a lot of unknowns there, and I'm not trying to use any sort of fear factor, but that's just from years of experience. If we, you know, limit this to a point where the only way these officers can get time off is filling it with another full-time officer, which is, right now, it's split 50-50. If an officer has 4 weeks vacation, 2 of those weeks is filled with overtime, 2 of those weeks are filled with part-time. If we make that change without the additional full-time staff, it would likely be, you know, overtime all the time. So, something else to consider.
And we touched on it before too, relative to the atrophy of the skills of the reserves. You can't put a price tag on the day in and day out duties that the full-timers are being exposed to the calls that they're exposed to, as opposed to reserve that might work 2 shifts in a month. And there's certainly a marked difference, and wouldn't be valid if I said otherwise. That it certainly makes a big difference.
That being said, the reserves are what keeps the department going. I mean, not to the same extent as the fire department, but they are an integral part.
No, we delegate to our reserves probably more than any other department around. But that being said, there's only so much you can delegate to a reserve officer versus an officer that's there 40 hours a week, so.
Can you help me understand that, please? Because I'm really misinterpreting a lot of questions, your comments.
Okay.
So at one point, I'm hearing, I don't trust my reserve officers.
Well, I didn't say that.
I have 2 reserve officers on duty, and that's a risk. Ergo, I treat it as, from my background, that's I don't trust. So, but then at the same time, you're also saying, oh, I'm giving more work to those police officers and they're getting on more duties, which now confuses me, saying I do trust them more and I do want to give them more work. How many years of the reserves you have? I mean, if you look at all your reserve officers, are they only 1 or 2 year? Or are they 10 years, 15 years?
We had a significant turnover with our reserve officers about 2 years ago. Most of them, because they aged out, a police officer can't work beyond 65 in Massachusetts. So we lost 4 very seasoned officers, which brought in 4 new ones. I would say, without having the roster right in front of me, we probably have 4 or 5 officers that have been on over 10 years. The rest of them are, far newer than that.
And they're pretty experienced.
It takes, some of them are, yeah. Some of them are, but they're not always working together. I mean, that's the problem. Once you get to a certain point and these officers pass all the skills to get out there and be on the road, it's by rotation who gets what shift. And certainly if we have a specific concern about a specific officer, we're going to address that. But there is a difference in their experience level, and that shows from time to time. And I think anybody would agree that there is a certain higher level of liability whenever you have 2 part-time officers working unsupervised on a shift versus having a full-time officer that's been through the full-time academy. You could have a reserve officer that has worked 5 years and still worked far less than a full-time officer that's only worked 1 year. So a lot of it is...
In terms of hours.
Yeah. I mean, I think if Bill Tyack was here, he'd tell you a good backhoe operator is made by time in the seat. You got to be there, you got to be working the levers, and that's how you get proficient. It's not any different for us. You have to be out there doing the job. It takes time with a part-time officer. Most of them have other jobs where they work a minimum of 40 hours, and I in absolutely no way want to disparage the part-time officers. We have some of the best ones around, and we use them to the best of their capabilities, and the department strives for it. We're never going to have a department without part-time officers, and I was one here. I couldn't say enough about the program, the training, and everything else. But we have pushed that limit as far as I'm comfortable pushing it, and I think it's just time to kind of ease up on it a little bit.
So your goal, again, is to have 1 full-time and 1 part-time?
A minimum of, exactly, 1 full-time and 1 part-time on a shift.
It always worked that way, but as close as...
Yep. Right now, when we did the statistics, it was about 174 times a year that there's 2 part-timers working together, so that's more than once every 3 days. Now, granted, there's 3 shifts every day, but that's too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything personal related to the reserve officers. It's just a structural issue
Yep.
that I think you're talking about and trying to address. And also, I think there's something to be said for someone being enmeshed in the community on a regular basis.
Yep.
In terms of being effective.
Yep.
How many hours training for full-time versus part-time. I think you had it in.
I do, I have it right here. It is 902 hours versus 365 hours for a difference of 536 hours.
And then the difference is on the job.
Well,
That's the,
That
yeah.
just adds up quickly when you're there for a full shift.
Yep.
Day after day.
I think that's even more of a difference.
Right.
Well, can you
Right.
speak a little bit about the extent of in-service training that the full-time officers go through every year versus the reserves?
That's actually leveling out a little bit between the two, but a full-time officer in Massachusetts is required to do a minimum of 40 hours of training every year. That, for us, includes a week back at the academy, and up to and including the captain and I. There are no exemptions. And that changes, the curriculum changes from year to year by what's going on in the Commonwealth, basically. The reserve officers, as of the last year, we've been sending to that as well. And in addition to that, we do our own in-service training program. We do our own firearms, which has to be a minimum of 16 hours every year. Defensive tactics, and then, yep, active shooter when we go into the schools and train after hours and such. We've trained in the Bucas School, we've trained in the Hamilton schools, we've trained Penguin Hall, we've trained at Gordon College with Gordon College officers.
And then
So,
we have an in-house roll call training system.
yep,
on a regular basis.
Doesn't your reserves get the same in-service in-house?
they do get the same in-service, yep, yep, yep. They just, the biggest difference is they don't get the upfront training, and they don't get as many hours doing the job. That's the most significant difference.
The upfront being the academy.
Yep. Yep.
I have a question about the SRO.
Sure.
I know Hamilton is funding it, and the SRO is going to be at the school.
Well, TBD.
Yeah, but
yeah. Sorry.
the way it's proposed in FY '20. So, if the proposal goes through, and I guess working up to the proposal, how involved has Wenham been in that process? And will you have a role in advising the schools and the SRO and what the SRO's role will be?
Good questions. Some of it I can answer comfortably, some of it I'm not quite sure yet, to be honest with you.
And I'm leaning toward, I think it would be useful to have Wenham involved,
Yeah.
which is why
Well,
I'm asking.
I do too, and I have had conversations directly with Chief Stevens from Hamilton, and he was fully supportive of that, of not only like during the hiring process, but also some information that Peter shared with me was, that they're looking at like a yearly review, I guess you'd call it, of the.
Yeah, so the state, relatively recently, I think in September, EOPS issued what they considered a model intermunicipal agreement around SROs. And so we've taken a look at that. They have some language around what it should look like for regional districts and the involvement of the other member communities, even if the SRO is funded by one town, which is generally how it's structured, and going to be in that town for the middle high school and so forth. And as the chief mentioned, at the very least, we would be involved in the initial hiring process and then the annual review process for what that person would be doing and how they would be integrating into the district. That's kind of the latest status update that we can give at this.
So, and that said hiring and annual review, which is great, but it sounded like it's a big question mark of what the person will actually be doing on a regular basis, programmatically, and in curriculum. And I guess I'm just curious, who's going to develop that plan, and are you going to have a role in it?
A lot of
I
that.
think would be useful.
Yeah,
if you
no,
did.
no.
So it's generally in the model document, it's the superintendent and his team principals and so forth, and the chief and the department, that's the hiring agency for that SRO.
The generic model.
Yep. Even with the regional component.
That doesn't
Even with or
include
without
Wenham.
regional.
Nope,
Right.
that's what that was their recommendation for the regional model.
Is
The
that
EOPS, you say?
And I can certainly, I'll send it around.
And the theme's definitely geared towards more school safety than it is investigatory or officer-initiated.
Yeah, actually, I think it'd be worthwhile to have the conversation after you've taken a look at the document, because
Okay.
I think it's gonna address a lot of the concerns that you and I'm
Well,
sure many
also,
others have.
You know what, whatever the officer does, basically, it's a lot of Wenham students are involved.
Of course,
Yep.
of course.
And so I just would like Wenham to be involved in whatever the
course.
programming
Yep.
is gonna be.
It-
Yeah.
Just because I think that's a worthwhile, process to be involved in, since there's so many Wenham students in the school system.
I totally agree, and I also think that kind of weaves in with discussions with the school committee in
Yeah,
terms of
yes.
how it might be applied. Again, not even saying that this is a regional district employee necessarily.
Yeah, I'm not talking about
but,
money,
Yeah,
not even, we can put it, whatever you want in the IMA,
Right.
but just, practically how it's gonna play out. I would appreciate Wenham involvement,
Sure.
just since there's so many Wenham kids.
No, as would I. We have an excellent relationship with the Hamilton Police. Chief Stevens and I, we meet every year with the superintendent together. The Alice program is a perfect example of that. We've been involved from the inception, so.
Mhm.
Has that position been removed from the school budget yet, or is that premature?
I think we'll find out on Tuesday.
yeah.
It's currently in the,
It's in-
in the
It's in the,
preliminarily adopted
It's still in the
budget,
school budget, though,
Yes.
as we
no
speak,
change
It
that
was
that
voted on.
we are aware of as of yet, right?
which is about 70,000, is that right?
9?
In that
73.
73, yeah. Any other questions on salary and wages? Should we move to expenses and the like? Or
just-
if you'd like to add anything.
Yeah, just one quick thing to add. The other request that we did have was to try to do something with the emergency management department.
Oh, right.
After some good counseling sessions with Peter and some internal meetings, what we'd like to consider is cutting that in half and reducing it by half. We were trying to slate 1 day a week for that position, and with the present climate and, the budget being what it is, I would rather see something go forward than nothing. So the original ask for approximately $13,000, we would, that was for 1 day a week. We'd be looking to cut that in half for $6,200. We did hand out some new literature today that should be in your packet that kind of defines what that position would be.
It was in the one you got yesterday.
I won't read the whole thing in the interest of time, but just to give you some idea of what should be going on, this is a pretty good document of, how busy this position could be. We've done a pilot program this year, trying to work within our existing budget, and we have an individual, one of our reserve officers that did retire, who had extensive background in the Coast Guard, was down for the Horizon oil well explosion, and helped mitigate that situation. And there's just a lot to be done with that position. We're spending more money on the town beach and animal control than we are on emergency management. And sooner or later, we're going to need that program to be robust. And he's already come a long way. He's been working with Captain DiNapoli. We've done some tabletop exercises. We've applied for some federal grants that we're waiting to hear back on. And the biggest thing with emergency management is networking and being involved with the people from the federal government and the state government. Because odds are when something serious happens, it's going to be bigger than just Wenham.
I mean, if.
Yeah, well, I'm good with that too. But that's my sales pitch on that. I'm certainly willing to entertain any questions, or I will go through the document if you want, but you can kind of see for yourself that there is a lot of busy work that could be done.
Is that the, I'm trying to find it, it was like a memo that had some bold black writing on it?
Yeah, it was in
Yeah.
yesterday's handouts.
So there's the community comparisons piece as well, right?
That's how some other communities are doing it.
I mean, a wide range on kind of the low end, right? Just a few $1,000s stipends or whatever, to the high end is tough to gauge. But, I mean, my question was going to be, like, can you even do anything with 4 hours a week? Is it meaningful? And I think this suggests that maybe it is.
I think so. I think it's a good start at least. A lot of municipalities do go the stipend route. It would be in my interest to say that'd be a good way to go, and I just don't think that it is. I think this is a better way to do it. I would say as a pilot program, it's been successful so far.
And just in an added note, as a crossover component, being a state accredited police department, we work on a regular basis, and the chief had touched on with tabletop exercise, emergency management exercise, multi-jurisdictional exercise. They all are all very important standards that we need to cover in our 3-year cycle, and we've already done some of those with Bob, who's been helping us out, and it's been very productive and covers a lot of those important standards in Chapter 46, which is emergency.
All right. So, shall we move to expenses?
Sure.
Unless there are other questions? Nope. Can always jump back if needed.
Very little in the way of changes there. Most of them are just fee increases up at the top of the page. I'm reading off of the more detailed sheet, if that helps. And then in the fourth column from the right, the total differences kind of simplify it for you. We are asking for an additional $1,000 in medical equipment and cruiser supplies. That's mainly from our medical supply officer, it's just getting more expensive. We haven't gotten an increase in that line item in quite a few years. We are working with the fire department. If they do make any sort of bulk purchases, we're jumping on with that as well. We both have the same defibrillator units, and the pads expire. They're pretty expensive, but when we have to replace pads and batteries, we do it together so we can get a better price in bulk. So the phone line item is just from my administrative assistants. That's a line that we took over from the RECC last year, and we just kind of took a guess at a number at what it was going to be, and we were just coming up short this year. So that is for all the phone lines, the landlines that are coming in, plus also the cruiser air cards are on a different line there. But so that'd be a combination of the cell phones and the landlines that the department has. Each cruiser also has a cell phone in it as a matter of redundancy. In case the radio system were to go down, at least you have that as a fallback.
Oh, and that also pays for the service and everything else.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And then the IMC Tri-Tech line item that down the bottom of the page that went up $200. We may be able to get rid of that in its entirety, depending on what happens with the dispatch center. If we wind up going to IMC full time, like we're on IMC right now. They're about to purchase it. If they do, they'll be paying the maintenance fee for all the communities, and we won't have that anymore. So that could be us. That is our records management system. That just, where we do all our data entry.
Security, 7,000?
Yep. We have a contract with Signet, which is the company that did the security for the police station when it was built. So we have 16 cameras that we maintain, and then all the security door locks, keypads and such. We pay $3,500 for the maintenance contract, and then the other $3,500 is for, like, we're constantly replacing, like, the keypads, and every once in a while, the outdoor cameras will freeze up and such, so.
How's the building holding up?
Building is holding up well. It is, it really is. Probably needs some paint in the near future, but it's been 10 years, so.
It's in the DPW budget for you.
I think so. Our buildings and grounds, I think, yeah. We did a walk around with Jim Politano last week, and he was the one that pointed out, when's the last time this was painted? I'm like, it's the original paint, and so it's held up well, but yeah, it's getting time. Anything else on expenses?
No.
Capital? Is that next?
So under capital, our $12,000 is a lease payment that we have to make, similar to what Bill was talking about with his loader payment and everything. That was a 3-year contract that we're, this will be the 2nd year. And the replacement of the cruiser laptops, in the spirit of cooperation, I'm willing to take off the table this year. Can certainly sort of see the handwriting on the wall anyway, and they're dated, and we'd like to replace them, but we can get another year out of the ones that we have. The frontline patrol vehicle is probably the most important thing. For those of you that do remember, back some years ago, we got in the habit of, we have to buy 1 police car every year for a frontline vehicle. We maintain 3 frontline vehicles, and they last 3 years, so they rotate out 1 each year. If we skip that, it throws everything into chaos.
How come they don't last longer than 3 years?
That's the #1 thing the officers use every single day. They run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
It just adds up. We turn them in with just under 100,000 miles, because you lose a ton of money if you go over that 100,000 miles on a trade-in. And it's not, I can't tell you how many times I've been up here and had someone say, I get way over 100,000
Got the soccer mom beat, I believe you.
Yeah, no, it's, you have 20 different people driving them.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
And the fact that they do go on, rapid response calls and stuff, it's just wear and tear, and they just don't last longer than that. We've tried, but they just don't. And the maintenance bills go through the roof, and what you wind up saving and not buying it for a year, you pay out more in maintenance bills. Your officers doubled up when the cars are broken down. It got so bad one year because we started skipping things that we actually had to borrow cars from the sheriff's department. Residents were furious. We're pulling up to alarm calls, and what are the sheriffs doing here? No, it's just us. We don't have any cars. So I would strongly advise avoiding that if we could. It was a bad time. And so we have a system that really works. We do 1 car each year, and every 3rd year we replace one of the administrative cars, and those we get 6 years out of, because they just don't get driven as much, as hard, and that's why they last longer. We do have 1 special purpose vehicle, which is our F-350 pickup truck that has a cap that carries all of our tactical gear, our vests, our long guns, and everything else. That's a 2012 and still going strong. So at some point, that'll be a separate capital expenditure. But right now, there's no need for that. But
How many administrative vehicles do you have?
2.
And 3 frontline?
And 3 frontline, and then the truck.
And the truck?
Yep.
No other vehicles?
We do have 1 other vehicle that we actually obtained for free from an insurance company through a program nationwide, I believe, or is it statewide?
MetLife, I believe.
Yeah.
I have all that.
Yep, but very, very reliable vehicle, and didn't cost the town a penny. So that we have to send officers to school, to training. any kind of undercover work or anything like that, so try not to talk about it too much.
Don't you have an unmarked one?
One of our frontline cars is unmarked. We have two marked.
So it's part of the front line?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
The 350 does get pulled into service when one of the frontline cruisers is.
It does. Every once in a while, you'll see it out.
You'll see it around on patrol from
Yep.
time to time.
Yep. Yep. We try not to overuse it.
There's one cruiser that's marked, but it's
Yeah,
very difficult.
yeah.
Two.
thanks.
Yep, two. We do have two now.
There's two of
They
them.
call them ghost graphics, so
Yeah.
that's kind of like a trend that's caught on all around the area.
It means you just have to drive the speed limit all the
cheating.
time.
They are marked. They've got
They are
lights.
marked. At night, they light up more than, almost
Right.
any vehicle on the road, but during the day, yep. And there's all sorts of studies out there. There's many reasons for it, but one of them is it's just kind of a calming effect on the public too, without having that bold black and white car sitting in front of the house. And so that we've gotten, some concerns. We've gotten a lot of compliments too. So
You can't lease these vehicles, can you? There's no.
it's not a tradition. No, you can, but it's not a traditional lease like you would think. It's basically just a 3-year loan, and then you own it at the end.
Yeah, I've done it
You
both
can't
ways.
You can't get rid of it. I mean, I can't go buy it.
It's not worth much at the end of the 3
Right.
years.
No, they usually end up taxis in New York City, believe it or not.
Oh, cool.
Most old police cars, yeah.
Has the budgeted amount been I remember it being roughly 40?
40.
Yeah.
Yep, so it's
Yep.
42 next year.
42 next year, and I'm hoping that's enough. We were told when we just purchased the car for this year that so what we drive are the Ford SUV Interceptor, which is a fancy word for an Explorer. But there are 122 different parts in the police package. They're totally changing the layout of the Explorer for 2020. So they said, you're looking at about a $5,000 increase. We're hoping that's not quite as accurate as they say. The biggest determination will be, will our console fit in the new vehicle?
Right.
Will our cage fit in the new vehicle? We'll probably have to change our computer mount. So we did increase the budget a little while back for new light bars, and that, I believe the town administrator kind of got a demonstration on how well those have served us. We replaced the old light bars that lasted 10 years. We used to get new light bars on every time we replaced a car. Every 3 years, we would get a new light bar, but with LED technology, they're lasting far longer.
Right.
The reason we upgraded to these new ones now, they're what they call smart light bars, sort of like your phone. When you pull a car over and go to get out, the second the car door opens, that side of the light bar turns off so the officer doesn't get blinded by it. Instead of being bright flashing lights, as soon as you put the car in park, it dulls it down and does like a steady light. You might have noticed it out on the highways and stuff.
So they changed their kind of pace of.
Yeah, because they were finding that especially, intoxicated people will actually aim
Like a
towards.
moth to a flame.
Yep,
Right.
and that's why you see those. How could somebody, hit a marked state trooper with, his lights flashing? It happens.
Yeah, or blind, sober oncoming drivers too.
Exactly, yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, so,
Of which we think there are still a few. Maybe, I don't know.
You're behind the technology curve. 6-year-old laptop actually turns on.
yeah, no, yeah, they're due, but, out of all of our priorities, that's certainly one that, we could
Takes
sort
you 10 minutes to retrieve data.
Yeah, they're not anywhere near as quick as they used to be, but you know as well as I do, once you get a new one, it's already obsolete by the time you mount it in the car.
So is the cruiser computer, so this third paragraph under rationale is the same as this line item, 24,000?
That's the NDTs.
Yes.
Those are the same.
We asked for 110 increase. That's why I have the questions, roughly. And we talked about potential offsets of about 30. So 24 computers and 6 from the emergency management. Did I catch that right? So
If that were
12.
halved from 12 roughly to,
Yeah, the total,
You said-
yeah.
Right, so roughly give or take.
right?
So we're still looking at a potential increase of about 80, right? 8, 9, 10, 11, yep.
Well, keep in mind, though, that although the COLAs aren't mandatory yet, that there will likely be some COLAs.
Yeah, and again, it assumes a 2% COLA, and
Yeah.
it's, you know, about $40,000 of that are, you know,
Lease,
COLA
or
adjustments.
calls rather.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously, larger department, the
Yeah.
COLAs, you see a bigger impact dollar figure.
Yep.
So all in roughly $1.5 million, a little over. What's our 1% is 200 grand, so 7.5%, something like that of our.
Pretty much
of our annual
exactly.
budget, right? Okay. Any other
I just have
question? Yeah, of course, Jim. Sure.
Chief, a little unusual question, I think. It's projected into the 21 capital, the auto plate.
Yep.
Has that been, how best to say this, has that been tested legally? In other words.
As far as in the courts, has it been challenged?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, yep.
Because it reads every plate of every one going, and what was the outcome of that court?
It's been upheld. It's been upheld, yeah. Yep.
It's no different legally, officers can run plates as they go by on their laptops.
If they suspect.
No,
They can run any and all plates.
Yep.
no violation at all.
No reason at all.
It's just
Oh,
a,
really?
it's just a technological
Advantage.
Yeah.
Because they,
I mean, I see the reason for it, and
Yep.
the.
Just wave kindly when they're behind.
We demoed one. We had one here.
You said you-
Yeah.
And a lot of our officers, though, are people have suspended licenses or arrest warrants, or,
Yep.
no insurance, they shouldn't be safe on, shouldn't be on the roads just by running a plate.
Yeah, no good comes from an accident with someone without insurance.
yes, indeed.
All right, I think, are we good? Any other questions or?
No.
All right.
Very much so.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
I think that brings us through our department reviews for tonight's agenda, right?
Yes, we're on the RFT.
Oh, yes, that's right. Carrier for last night. So,
I gotta grab it.
talked a bit about it last night, so let me see if I can remember the amount.
6,400.
So is it-
I was
I know, I didn't give it to you.
Just one.
Yeah, I just
Oh,
gave one so
sorry.
they can sign it.
6,400.
There you go.
No, 74.
And,
69.
all right, so I'll,
Very short-term memory.
We're messing with you. The numbers aren't changing, are they?
Yeah, no.
yeah, I'll just, it's just 900 series, all the backup info. And then, so why don't I just establish the motion, and then we can, if there's any follow-up questions, obviously, I know we talked about it last night, but we can certainly do so today, so I'll use this for the
Yep.
motion. Okay, so I move that the Finance and Advisory Committee approve the request for a reserve fund transfer in the amount of $6,900 from the reserve fund to be transferred to BOS expenses for the purpose of funding an independent land appraisal of the 62 Maple Street property, also known as Maple Woods.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, thanks. Are we good with what, bless you,
Bless you.
with what we're doing it for?
Yes.
We'll certainly be talking a lot about, I'm sure, this development, assuming it, I mean, it sounds positive and as if it's going to be moving forward. It sounds like it's it's still a few hurdles, but the there's no reason to believe it's gonna fall flat again, at least at this stage, and we do this anyway, so that the town has a reasonable reassurance that this thing is worth 1.8.
Yeah, I think ultimately,
Right.
you know, it's gonna be, I would expect that it will, go to town meeting.
Right. Right.
And so then within the context of that, you know, if that were to be the case, there's gonna be a fair amount of contingencies. One of them is the town's right of first refusal on the property. And so within that, having that data point on what the valuation of the property is based on our appraisal versus what their appraisal said, I think is important. Certainly, the board feels like it is.
Right.
If they build something there, we still tax them, right? They'd still have to pay a tax.
Yeah, so right now, yeah, I mean,
It's not tax exempt.
No,
Okay.
it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, we get tax revenue, but we're also buying it for them.
Well,
Here's our
open
taxpayer money
space,
to buy the land for you so you can build it.
revenue versus open space.
I have a question for after the
That's
motions.
the-
Okay.
what you get at
True.
town
Gotcha.
meeting.
And it's now Chapter 61, so we're not getting the revenue there.
Uh-huh.
But we are giving them $1 million potentially of our taxpayers' dollars,
Mhm.
right? That have gone into CPC and Affordable Housing Trust.
But
So
it's nice
come
open
from
space.
taxpayers. Yeah, and then, of course, it gets us over the hurdle for
Yes, sir, yeah.
that, which I know lots of people want to see happen.
Have there been projections if this gets fully developed, what a 10-year revenue projection would look like in terms of taxes from that?
It's a great question.
You're reading my
Great
mind, Jim. I
question.
just wrote a note to myself. Tax revenue
good.
projections for Maplewood
There you
projects.
go.
Do it
So,
up.
That is a good question.
So we don't have, I mean, that's a pretty soft number right now, I don't imagine.
yeah, so we,
So, yeah.
And we have about 4 to 5 years before it's even
Correct.
finished,
Before it's
right?
even built, I mean.
We're about to vote on this. Would the, is it the, I forget the name of
Do you want the name of the appraisal company in the motion?
I don't feel that the Shannon Company, I don't feel like it has to be there, but thank you. But the Shannon Company, of course, is just appraising the land as is for fair and best use, and can't go so far as to tell us what that 45-unit
Right, right. No, I
apartment
understand.
building would be worth, but that would be nice, because that would underlie what the revenue source from taxes would be, right, on the value of that property, which I sure as heck have no idea, but, okay. Anything else before we vote?
I'm sure.
Okay, then we'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Get that process started. Time is of the essence here. Get this thing moving forward. Okay. Now we're up next week, Tuesday, is it the 5th?
Tuesday the 5th, we've got confirmation from both Hamilton and the schools in the past 24 hours that is 100% confirmed.
Okay.
That said, we did also hear just before the meeting tonight that for some reason the Hamilton FinCom did not have the 6th on their schedule.
Mm.
Not quite sure how that happened, but that's the case.
Hmm.
So I circulated an email right before we came in.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Yep, I looped you in on that.
So maybe
So-
they can
Sure,
get it on their schedule?
Didn't sound like it,
Oh,
but there was,
Different date.
yep, so we're now gonna have the challenge of trying to find another date, which, as we all know, is gonna be difficult just based on the timing of things, so.
Okay. What is the, there are some key timelines, right? Some hard stops with regard to the school, obviously. They're
Yeah, I
gonna
mean,
vote on the project.
hypothetically, we could have your meeting on the 11th, which was kind of a wrap-up,
That was our wrap-up.
your wrap-up.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it would be,
I don't know.
yeah. We have to give that thought too, because as I think we've talked a little bit about, I mean, the purpose of that meeting is to discuss and deliberate all of this.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about there, and that was going to be prior to our 14th Valentine's Day special with VOS to
That's
get on the
what's
same
changed to the
page.
20th, right?
Oh, the 20th is gone, 14th.
Sorry.
20th is off, 14th is there.
Right.
It's a moving target.
Don't we love budget season?
Oh, that's.
14th.
I just realized it, yeah.
That was on the agenda from back when the agenda was posted.
Right.
So pay no attention to that. But, yeah, so we'll have to do some behind the scenes work.
So, yeah,
And scheduling.
so they had the 6th with Hamilton FinCom.
We
That
did. We had it scheduled
Right.
with them.
Right.
They told us tonight that that wasn't on their schedule.
Oh, so the 5th they have on their schedule.
5th they do.
The 6th they don't.
6th they don't.
Oh, so we have nothing doing if they're not available on the 6th because it's joint programs.
Correct.
Okay.
So do we want to move our 11th meeting to the 6th?
A little hard to do that before we've had.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
Probably need
yeah,
the full,
yeah.
yeah, no, it's otherwise a good idea, but we'll need to get through those, I guess. So, okay,
That
so we're
being-
just
That
gonna,
being said, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, there's actually nothing in the shared service programs
yeah.
that is on the above level service list.
Mhm.
So there's no increase, I didn't see an increase, but.
I mean,
And we all went
Trying to say we
last
don't need
year.
the meeting?
no, what I'm saying is that you could have the larger, conversation around what would make it into the, the town's level service budget,
Right,
and independent of the joint programs.
right.
Or could they present to us and do Hamilton Wenham at a FinCom at a different date? If we kept our date the 6th.
What do you mean?
Joint programs
Joint
present
programs
twice?
and
Yes,
and
they would
Hamilton
have to present
presented
twice.
if-
I don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that we wanna ask them to do that, plus we wanna be there to hear Hamilton's questions and vice versa.
Yeah, I think there's value in having the one sit down. I
Yeah.
think if anything, maybe having the larger conversation on the 6th.
Yeah, we could, that's next Wednesday, so that's in under a week. So, I mean, this is all gonna be fresh in our minds anyway, so ideally at that stage, we have each kind of, we'll be in a position where we can share our thoughts on what, going through the above level services, where we think they're warranted or not. Again, kind of irrespective of whether or not the warrant structure plays out to be, to fund overrides and how those may be, override options kind of aside.
Is the, let's just so I understand this, is the Board of Selectmen, 'cause I think I've heard this at one of their past meetings, are they prioritizing the above-level service requests?
I think what they said was, they recognize, like all of us do, that there's a lot of merit to much of what has been proposed,
Right.
both in terms of staffing and compensation, and the capital needs.
Well said.
But, there's only, so much of that can be funded. And so I think the answer, the general direction back from the board was not, none of this is on the table. It was more, we need to deliver an Article 1 budget that does not require an operating override for the town.
So that's their position on, for the town operations?
Yes,
Override.
yeah. So what the net effect of that would do would be if we added any of, these other things into the mix on the town side,
Yep.
then the school operating override would be increased. But we couldn't add so much that we actually needed an operating override on the town side.
For the town side, right.
Okay, so one influences the other.
So there's a practical limit there.
Yep.
And, having heard from the departments, almost all of them, and recognizing that value in the ask and having run lean anyway, we're certainly willing to entertain, where appropriate, and that's what we'll discuss and deliberate above level services increase requests. And to Peter's point, that'll reduce the amount, the portion of which our Article 1 level services funds the school's budget,
Yeah,
which
that
is
will
already
be, that
a
will be the
fraction
message
of-
out next Tuesday night.
Right,
Right, is
exactly,
to say,
yeah.
this, based on our current budget status,
here's what we can afford.
This is what we can afford, and this is what we anticipate at a minimum for the school operating override. That being said, there may be elements of salary, expense, and capital that are added to the town side, which will serve to increase the operating override for the schools in the next couple weeks beyond that.
Holding their budget constant,
Yes.
as was adopted on a
Right,
preliminary
and
basis, yeah.
I don't know if there's any, discussion or interest in reducing or adding anything on the school side, I don't know.
Right.
We'll find out Tuesday night, presumably.
Yeah, okay. So, how much time do we have to make the determination as to whether the 6th gets repurposed?
So I think maybe we just leave the 6th on there as a placeholder.
Yes.
We bounce around some emails in the next day or so and see what everybody's availability is
Right.
on Hamilton, to see if they might be available on the 11th.
On the 11th.
And if that is the case, we would flip-flop the
Yeah.
purpose of the meetings, because otherwise it gets, more complicated, because, it's a busy week. Otherwise, you're already scheduled to meet twice that following week. The BOS has their own meeting that week, CPC's meeting that week, and all their applications. And then the following week after is school vacation, and we're generally trying to stay away from holding meetings that week.
Yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate the committee's commitment and effort. Doubling up 2 weeks in a row is a huge effort. Sure.
I mean, it does look like February 13th.
So February 13th is CPC's deliberations on all of their FY20 funding requests. So we're trying to leave that open for them so that they can have this room and have HWCAM here.
But for the joint, right, because HW can't, but I was thinking for the joint services, we could meet somewhere else. But
We could hypothetically meet at Bucher. That would be 3 meetings that week.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
let's see how it
Worst
pans out
Valentine's
with
week ever.
yeah, with we don't want to burn ourselves out. We've got a long road ahead still too. So
Okay.
stay in the game,
Can you
stay
send
on
this
point.
to-
All right, so but we are at Bucher next Tuesday, 7 o'clock. That much we know. Thank you. All right, any other matters to address?
No.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
Sounds great. Aye. Okay,
Thank you, Alex.
thank you guys.